All right, so the Zero Hanger MVP is finalised for season 2023. So we're going to go down the list from 10 to 1. But before we do that, just Mitch, a bit of a refresher. So how does the voting work for the Zero Hanger MVP?
Yeah, so each game of every round, we had 4 riders vote 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So maximum 20 votes for one player for best on ground. Obviously, anything about 17 votes or higher, you're probably going to be considered the best on. Now, obviously, with a max of 20 players able to be voted in, there is more of a widespread of votes compared to the Brownlow, where you really can only have up to 3 players poll a vote in one game. So a bit more of an interesting dynamic, a bit different. And we've had recent winners, Tuke Miller and Patrick Cripps last year. They shared the title. The year before that, Ollie Wines. So with Cripps and Wines, the last 2 guys to win the Brownlow, it could certainly bode well for whoever wins it this year on Brownlow night.
Yeah. So one standalone winner this year, had it tied last year between 2. But let's start. So number 10, Toby Green.
Toby Green, yeah, what a season he's had. Career best by some margin, I think. He's been so consistent throughout his career, but a 60-goal season. I think he finishes 4th in the Coleman. Certainly will add to that tally across his finals campaign. But yeah, absolutely amazing effort, 172 votes. That does very well in last year's count from memory. So I don't know what more we can really say for him. He played a full season. No injury or suspension issues is a big tick for him. Great chance to be an All-Australian captain. A big piece in why the Giants are playing in September this season.
Yeah, and to have a year like that in his first year as standalone captain for the Giants too, with that extra pressure on his shoulders, unbelievable. All right, so number 9, Jordan Dawson.
Dawson, yeah, so it's just 6 votes ahead of Toby Green, 178 votes for the season for Jordan Dawson. He actually polled in 17 games, the same as our winner, which we'll reveal in a little bit. But yeah, another player who I think was just consistent throughout the year. And that probably goes to show in polling 17 games, not obviously being as many votes as who finished on top, but was just always among the best for his side in wins or losses. Another guy who's taken on the captaincy this year, and he's taken on much more of the workload in midfield, working with Rory Laird. He's been a standout for them. Great chance to take out the Malcolm Blight medal. And another one that's obviously in All-Australian contention.
Yeah. And in number 8, we have Tim Taranto. So a bit of a controversial snub from the All-Australian this year, but he came in number 8 in our MVP.
Yeah, 180 votes, so just 2 ahead of Dawson to finish 8th. I had a look, he finished 94th last year. So that just goes to show the kind of leap he's had. He was always a great player for GWS, but this year, by far, a personal best season in that move to Richmond. Just a hustler inside midfield, kicked a lot of goals moving forward. There's obviously a lot of knocks on him, and that's probably why he's not in the All-Australian squad. But for us, finishes 8th, 180 votes in what was a fantastic season for him.
Yep. All right, and at number 7, we have Caleb Sarong.
Yeah, so coming in 183 votes. So it's really close among that 10th down to 6th, but Sarong in 7th, 183 votes, a few ahead of Taranto, and a player who's had a breakout season, was really strong for Freo last year. Now he's probably surpassed Andrew Brayshaw as Fremantle's number 1 midfielder. Has just taken his game to new heights. Not the season the club would have liked, but they're getting a lot out of guys like Sarong and Jackson, who are only 21, 22 years of age. So the future's really bright for Fremantle.
Yep. And speaking of young talent, so number 6, someone who's stamping themselves as a very good young talent, Zach Butters.
Yeah, one that certainly could feature higher from a Brownlow standpoint. So I think 6th in our ranking certainly could still mean that he's a great chance to go on the podium for the Brownlow. 188 votes. So there you see it, 16 votes separates 10th in Toby Green and 6th in Zach Butters in our MVP award. And then, as we've mentioned already, Butters is just a fantastic player. I don't think anyone really saw this kind of season coming from him. Maybe from Connor Rozee, and then Rozee has probably been equally as good as and on to Butters in some aspects, but just an explosive player. Had that great period, I think, between it was like around 6 or 7, all the way through to the buys, where he just was being touted as arguably the best player in the competition. Mm-hmm. And just his explosiveness, his kicking efficiency, his attacking traits, as well as his defensive efforts. very thoroughly deserving of a top 10 spot in our MVP.
Yeah, not going to forget that game that he had against the D's where he basically won it off his own boot in the rain. Very damaging to me. So number 5. Now this guy, he was sitting at number 1 for a lot of the year in Nick Dacos.
Yeah, so I think you kind of see Dacos at 5th, and despite him being a great chance for the Brownlow, there's a very good reason why he certainly still is. So he came away with 197 votes, so obviously the same amount of votes he had when he suffered that knee setback, was put on ice for the rest of the home and away season. But in 12 games, he polled in only 12 games. So most I think we had out of our top 10 was 18. The winner had 17, as did Jordan Dawson. But yeah, Dacos really only polled in 12 games, but in all 12 of those games, he polled at least 10 votes, which is a really, really significant, pointer to him probably getting a lot of Brownlow votes. So guys that poll votes in our MVP still doesn't necessarily mean they're a strong chance to get Brownlow votes. If you're getting 1 vote in the MVP, means you're a very low chance, whereas 20 means you're probably guaranteed. And 10 or in that 10 to 12 mark means you are a good chance. So if he's polling Brownlow votes in 10 games 12 games, then that's going to go a long way for his Brownlow efforts. In our MVP, however, as I mentioned, there's a lot more chance for players to poll votes and add to their season tallies. That's probably why it's a bit lower. But obviously the most among, and 10 vote games, I think, the most votes in a game in 6 of his games. So if you're taking on, if it's the best performer, if they're getting 3 votes, that's 6 games where he's getting 3 Brownlow votes. So a great season for Nick Dacos. Very unlucky not to get it. Had the lead when he got injured. But there's certainly a reason why he's 5th and still can take out the Brownlow medal.
Yeah, and not much more to be added. Just how good of a player he is.
Yeah, don't have to touch on him too much.
Yeah. All right, and in number 4, probably a bit of a surprise to most people, we have Errol Goulden.
Yeah, he came home really strong. Probably the strongest player with his back half of the season. Was obviously a solid contributor from round 1. But the last 6 or 7 weeks, he's put on a number of 20-vote games and was narrowly missed out. Polled 19 votes in the final round of the season, 1 vote less than what the guy who came in 3rd did. So, he really could have been on the podium. Very tight race, 1 vote behind the 3rd place for 202 votes. And just a player who's developed into one of the premier wingmen in the game, can still play inside. Fantastic eyes for goal. Thoroughly deserves a spot in the top 5, I think.
Yeah, kicks goals in big moments too as well. Very good young talent. So getting into the top 3 now. So in number 3, we have Lachie Neale.
Yeah, he's probably one that's floated in the top 10 a lot of the year, but a bit like Errol Goulden, came home with a lot of strong performances late to close that gap on the podium, and then in the last round polled 20 votes. Perfect game against the Saints to see, to stamp his spot as 3rd overall. Just leapfrog Errol Goulden in the last round. But once again, another captain who's really just put his team on his back on a number of occasions. Fantastic ball winner, distributor, and has worked really well with Josh Dunkley and Will Ashcroft this year. So I think certainly a surprise to see him 3rd. I think, from a Brownlow perspective, maybe not on the podium, but there you go. That might be a bit of a surprise one come Brownlow night if it's anything similar like we've seen in similar years with our MVP and the Brownlow medal.
Yeah, it is funny because he is, it's Lachie Neale, but it is kind of understated that how good he has been this year. So
absolutely.
An interesting one. All right, so coming down to the top 2, and these guys it was a 2-man horse race in the end. And we have number 2 in my boy, Christian Petrarca.
Yeah, so he could have won it in the last round. He still polled votes in the last round, but needed a few more to be any chance of taking out the award. Didn't do so, but I think this goes to show, much like Neil, I think a lot of people are kind of underrating Christian Petrarca's year this year. Was pretty strong, even with Clayton Oliver in the team. And then when Clary went out, he went to a new level. Obviously, even had some games playing more forward and still dominated games there and won it off his own boot. So 224 votes is a very, very good return. Second place finish in our MVP. And certainly could have had a chance to win it. So another one to consider on Brownlow night, I guess. Yeah.
Do you think it hurt his chances moving forward, or?
No, I think there's still a couple of those games where he played, where he was required to play more in the forward 3rd. He still picked up a few votes. Whether he has that same impact on the game, it's probably different. But I think as far as his standing in the game, he's still among the best players for sure.
Yeah. All right. And so, down to the last one. So our winner of the Zero Hanger MVP comes down to Marcus Bontempelli.
Yeah, premier player of the competition quite easily, I think. So he ended the season with a 19-vote gap over Christian Petrarca. As we mentioned, I think he carried a 13-vote gap into the last round, polled a few votes against the Cats. And it'll be really interesting to see how the Brownlow night concludes with that last round, because he'll have, I think, some votes for Adam Treloar, Isaac Smith, Tom Liberatore, Tim English, Tom Stewart, a few of them certainly in consideration for votes in that game. But for our MVP, yeah, he polled enough to secure the MVP, the first place, 243 votes. As I mentioned, he polled in 17 games this year. Just fantastically consistent. Now, Petrarca actually polled in 18, but had just a lot more games where it was less votes, where the Bont had 6 20-vote games, so 6 unanimously voted best on ground performances, and then another 6 of 12 or more votes. Now, I think last year we had a look. Any game where you're getting 12 or more votes, you're probably going to be a good chance to be getting Brownlow votes. So that's a total of 12 games. So very similar to Nick Dacos, but Dacos may be getting a lot more 2s or 3s. Bonk can get the occasional 1, and obviously winning record plays a big factor into it as well, with the Pies winning a lot more games than the Dogs. So that's probably where they'll decide on Brownlow night. But with our MVP, it tends to see if you're missing games, there's a very good chance that you get overcome by some of the other players around you. And Marcus Bontempelli, not missing a game, playing consistent from day one. Thoroughly deserving, and in my eyes, the best player in the AFL at the moment.
Absolutely. All right, so who missed out?
So the big guys that probably missed out, Connor Rozee was one up there. Jeremy Cameron was certainly one up there earlier in the season. Luke Davies-Uniacke had that really strong start to the season, and we thought that he was going to be one that was going to be rivaling Nick Dacos.
He was top spot for a little while.
He was, yeah. He had, I think, almost a perfect first couple of weeks. And then obviously injuries hit and some setbacks. And then it doesn't help when your club goes on a 20-game losing streak as well. So, he was one that had a lot of high hopes earlier in the season. But yeah, I think guys like Connor Rozee, Andrew Brayshaw, Zach Merritt featured quite highly. Jack Sinclair was another one that was in our top 10 a lot of the year and just fell out late into the season. So, it'll be interesting. I don't know who my tip for next year would be. Bont and Dacos certainly up there again. Petrarca, Goulden, Butters. A lot of these guys are so young. Sarong as well. But Tom Green may be one. If I have to give a bit of an outsider, I think he's one that's going to take the league by storm next season. Yep.
Any surprises in the top 10 for you?
Yeah, as we mentioned, I think Lachie Neale finishing third probably wasn't something we even saw a couple of weeks ago, but he just had a very strong finish. Errol Goulden as well. I think you've said at the start of the year, if you take this as the best players in the competition, if he's a top 5 best player in the competition, if you told me that at the start of the year, I'd be quite surprised, but certainly deserving of a title like that. Nick Dacos, no one saw, I think, his season coming, and he certainly rivals Bont as the number 1 player in the competition. And then I'm just happy to see Toby Green, I think, have the year he has had, and hopefully he can steer the Giants to a finals win in a couple of weeks' time.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Well, congratulations to Marcus Bontempelli for winning our 2023 Zero Hanger MVP. Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, Phoenix.
And don't forget, you can catch all the latest AFL news at zerohanger.com.